First question would be, what is your theme about? What is domain-specific expertise development?
There is no such thing like general expertise. If you think that a person who is an expert in one domain should be a very good person to hire for another domain, you're wrong. Excellence and professionalism, when we talk about professional domains. Excellence is being very good in your trade. Professionalism is being a good representative of your profession.
What makes an expert and what differentiates a novice from an expert?
It's not only that a novice is not so excellent or not so professional, but the novice has to go through a lot of stages before they are able to pick up all those roles. And becoming master of the field in conceptual terms are steps that you have to take on the way to become an expert. Another thing that takes place from novice to expert levels is that in the way that professions and so are organized, you have all kinds of transitions that are part of it. One transition is from theoretical training to practical training. Another transition is from practical training to becoming a person who has his or her own responsibilities, become a person who can train other people, etc., etc.
Els, could you give me a concrete example of a research project you have been executing to illustrate the theme a little bit more?
My first research projects regarded the question, how does expert knowledge develop and how do knowledge structures develop? I started to investigate what factors in the practical learning situations affected those learning processes. We had the idea that we knew a lot about the theoretical learning situations and the difference between traditional curricula and problem-based curricula. Then we moved on to, what makes learning in practice difficult? What kind of obstacles do students meet there? What are stress factors and how do they cope with those stress factors? What is the role of the teacher there? What's the role of feedback? How can you organize feedback? All that kind of questions we investigated.
I could imagine that a lot of research programs in the Netherlands are dealing with professional development and domain expertise. What makes CELSTEC's program special?
Learning process and the cognitive effect of the learning process is on the individual. We include all the context and the interaction with other professions, etc. But we look at the individual and how the individual learning processes take place and how these can be affected. We also look at how performance can be optimized.
Common mishaps, misconceptions. I remember from a talk we had that you mentioned a number of hang-ups. Could you give me one or two examples of those hang-ups and the way you try to tackle them in your research?
Yeah, well, I have several. One of the hang-ups is that many people think that you can better address to a person who has just finished school and knows it all, instead of going to an old hand in the field. That's a misconception. A person who just comes from the university may know it all, but still needs this further learning and further practice before he can really use that knowledge in practical situations. Schools seem to think, and theories seem to think, that learning to learn is enough to make people able to learn in practice while they are a professional, when they are a young professional, a starting professional. Learning to learn can help, but in school you have learned to learn in certain ways, and in the practice you again have to learn in other ways from other fields.
There are a lot of things changing in professions nowadays. Could you elaborate on how this deals with learning?
Well, if you look at professional careers and the way that we used to look at education in relation to professional careers, old idea, or maybe still the prevalent idea, is that people are prepared for a profession, for a career, and they learn to learn, and then they are off on their own, and the professional practice takes over with special schoolings and trainings, etc. The things that are going to happen in those careers will be more dramatic than they used to be. Being responsible as a profession for the quality of that profession and the work that is done there requires that you look again at how people are trained mid-career, even later stages, to take care that at the end they are also can function in a way that they can use what they have built up in all those years of practice and the excellence that is building up.
Could you mention the main research challenges you see in the years to come, let's say 10 years from now?
Retooling of the profession is a very intriguing thing. It's similar to what happens with new gadgets that are introduced into whatever kind of community. The mobile phone is brought as a mobile phone, and within a couple of years it has become a new instrument, and does many other things, and that was not foreseen by the persons who brought this mobile phone to the community. And not only the thing changed, but also our way of dealing with it. The use of that tool must be invented as well, and within that reinvention process, the tool is reinvented itself, and the practices around that are also changed.